Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed part one of the amazing interview with Matt Doherty. And for those of you that listened to part one, the next 13 minutes will be a recap of the end of part one and the intro. So just feel free to skip ahead to the 13-minute mark of the podcast to begin part two with this incredible interview with Matt Doherty, former North Carolina head coach, right here in the Sports Deli. For those of you that did not listen to part one, feel free to listen to the next 13 minutes where we will chronicle the introduction of Coach Doherty as well as the tail end of part one. For Dr. J, I'm Hootie Hoot. Enjoy part two of the interview with Coach Doherty right here in the Sports Deli. Welcome first-time listeners and returners to the Sports Deli. The Sports Deli is sponsored by SportRx. SportRx is the leader in sports prescription eyewear. You can find them online at sportrx.com. And don't forget to enter the code DELI10 at checkout for your special 10% discount. We also want to give props to PSK Collective. Be inspired in PSK, where their clothing promotes inclusivity, empowerment, and equality by supporting female athletes through the Women's Sports Foundation. You can find them online at pskcollective.com or at walmart.com. We also want to thank citylokes.com, where you can get your own personalized hats and phone cases, tees, accessories, and much, much more. I ordered 2 hats, and they're amazing. One of them says the Sports Deli, and it has a California license plate, and the other one has a Michigan license plate and says Speak Up and Dribble, Black Lives Matter. So check them out at citylokes.com, and don't forget to enter the code THESPORTSDELI at checkout for your special 10% discount. And we're so excited to finally be supporting Moolah Kicks. They're dropping in May of 2021. They are the first female-only brand basketball shoe, and you can find them online at Moolah. Moolah is Moolah, Kicks, like shoes, Kicks, plural, moolahkicks.com. Again, much thanks to Natty White, the founder of Moolah Kicks. You can always send us an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com. And you can also DM us on Instagram at Mike Hootner or on Twitter at Michael Hootner. A little bit about Hootie Hoot. I coached college basketball for 23 years, 15 on the men's side and 8 on the women. And I now coach at a low-income, first-generation high school girls basketball here in San Diego. I played 4 years of college basketball. I'm a life coach. I have a beautiful daughter. I'm a professional basketball skills trainer. We love to share space with our guests here in the Sports Deli to talk about the intersection between race and sports, mental health and sports, equality, empowerment, empathy, leadership, education, sports, and solutions. We talk a lot about white privilege. We want to help mobilize, listen, learn, and pay it forward. Remember, your voice matters when fighting systemic racism. Read a book, acknowledge your white privilege, watch a movie about institutional racism, call your local or state representatives, and or have a conversation with someone that doesn't look like you. We have to change the economic, educational, police, housing, prison, and voting suppression narratives that currently need to be changed in this country. And the only way to do that is to listen and learn, and then help be a part of the mobilization and change that we want to see. We're so honored that you're joining us today, and we hope that you can grab your favorite deli sandwich or bagel and your favorite beverage, and let's do this together in the Sports Deli. We are so honored to share space today with Matt Doherty, who hails to us from Long Island's East Meadow, New York. He played for the legendary North Carolina coach Dean Smith and won a national championship in 1982, defeating the Georgetown Hoyas only a year after losing to Bobby Knight's Indiana Hoosiers in the 81 championship game on a jumper by a young Michael Jordan. And they did so in front of 63,000 fans some 39 years ago, the first ever Final Four in a domed stadium. He not only played alongside MJ, but big game James Worthy, Sam Perkins, Kenny Smith, and Brad Doherty. During his 4 years at North Carolina, he was a part of 117 wins and only 21 losses. He played in the 80 McDonald's All-American game, which included current Sixers coach Doc Rivers. That same year, his Holy Trinity High School team won the Class A New York State High School Boys Championship, and he shares a birthday with Kurt Rambis, Joakim Noah, and arguably the greatest pro wrestler of all time, Ric Flair.
Absolutely.
He began his coaching career with an AAU team before being an assistant at Davidson, where John will share his story and ask his question later about a former teammate of ours. And then at Kansas, before becoming a head coach at Notre Dame, of course, at North Carolina, FAU, and SMU. He worked as a bond salesman for 3 years, but hated it. He's been a color analyst and an associate commissioner of the A10. He worked for the Indiana Pacers as a college scout, and he's currently a part of his DLP. I just made that up. I don't know if that's what he calls it. The Dougherty Leadership Practice. He does some executive coaching, speaks to corporations about leadership, and has a couple of weekly radio gigs in Charlotte. He also freely admits to missing coaching, referring to coaching as his drug, and doesn't rule out coaching again, saying, if we can have a 78-year-old president, I think I could be a head coach again at 58. Dougherty's book, Rebound, From Pain to Passion, Leadership Lessons Learned, goes in depth about what he learned from his stormy 3-year tenure as UNC's basketball coach. It can be found at rebound-book.com, where you can use PayPal or Venmo to pay for the book, and the cost includes shipping. Him and his wife, Kelly, have 2 children. You can find him online on Instagram at MF Doherty. Doherty is Doherty, or on Twitter at Doherty Matt, where he has over 11,000 followers, or at letsengage.com/talent/Matt/Doherty. We are so honored that you're joining us, Coach. Thanks for coming and getting that karma in the sports deli.
Yeah, no, I love karma, ideally on rye. So, I love delis, man. I grew up in Long Island. Boar's Head. You get the heroes. Nothing like a New York deli.
Nothing like a New York deli. It's not like that in Detroit, but I grew up in Detroit. That's where I spent my first 18 years, and we had our version of Coney Island, and I'd get loose fries and a loose burger, with the chili on top of the burger and the chili fries. And man, there was nothing like it during lunchtime.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. You look skinny. How'd you stay so skinny?
Genetics, I guess.
Yeah.
So I just want to touch on MJ. Matt has said in the past that MJ was obviously very cocky. Most of us saw The Last Dance, or a lot of us did anyway, during the pandemic that talked about the Bulls and Michael Jordan. And obviously Matt had firsthand knowledge about Michael, being around him all the time and seeing how competitive he was. He was always trash talking and teasing, whether it was about hair or clothes. Everything was competitive. But he was also really kind, Matt said. He had amazing parents. Obviously, it was very unfortunate what happened to his father. He had an older brother that was also a very good player, shorter, but a very good player that he learned a lot from. And MJ once wrote Matt's mom a handwritten letter. Such a kind gesture. But, Matt said that it really wasn't rocket science. He said that Michael was just a great person. He wrote the foreword to his book that we talked about earlier and that we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But good kids come from good parents. And Michael's parents were great parents, he said. He remembered one time when there was an Ezekiel festival in Wilmington, and Michael's family let him stay there with him. And obviously he was super competitive all the time in practice. We've heard the legendary stories about him being competitive, whether it's gambling or, just about anything. You'll hear a story later about Michael and Coach Dougherty golfing together. But he told a story where Michael would point to someone in the locker room before practice at North Carolina. And that basically meant that they were going to get dunked on that day. So there's just a lot of neat stories that he had about Mike, which everyone's always interested in. Um, I'm sure he learned a lot about leadership from Mike as well. Um, and if somebody did have a good day against MJ, that they better not show him up, because obviously he could take things to a whole nother level. But he said one of the things that he didn't realize when Mike came in as a freshman was how unbelievably athletic he was. He said he was able to do things that he had never seen before. His ability to hang in the air and to spin the ball in so many different ways was just remarkable, not to mention his defense. He said he was just an incredible defender even back then. And fast forward to when Coach Dougherty was the head coach at North Carolina and resigned or was sort of forced out or let go. He said he got a long voicemail from MJ, and he was really pissed. He thought he could have stayed on and turned the ship around, but obviously it wasn't in the cards. And one of the other things that Coach Dougherty mentioned was because there was a little bit of turmoil, a little bit of tension between the Carolina faithful and maybe the coaching family. And he said Roy Williams did a really nice thing. When Matt came back in 2018 for the dedication of the Roy Williams Court, he said he did something he didn't have to do. And in the coach's locker room, they have a coach's locker room at North Carolina. He put pictures on the wall of all the coaches, right? Just a coach's locker room, just for the coaches to go to and either change if they're going to go work out or, just a separate locker room from the main locker room, just for the coaches. And he just thought it was such a nice gesture for him to put, Frank McGuire and then Dean Smith, obviously, and Bill Guthridge and himself, Matt, Doherty, had his picture on the wall. And obviously now Roy Williams and Hubert Davis will be on that wall as well. But he just said that it made him feel so good because he said it was really hard for him to, come back to be the head coach of North Carolina and, in a lot of ways be a disappointment. And to now come back sort of full circle and be in the good graces of that Carolina family, so to speak, in that coaching fraternity, in North Carolina circles, in the brotherhood, was really special to Matt. Again, we hope you enjoyed part one of the interview with Coach Matt Doherty, and we're so honored that you're joining us again today for part two of this incredible two-part series with Coach Dougherty right here in the Sports Deli. And we will begin part two with John asking a question about new head coach at North Carolina, Hubert Davis.
Talk about how you think, Hubert Davis is coming in, hasn't been a head coach before. And, how do you think it will be different than your experience? And you had coached at Notre Dame. You were the head coach at Notre Dame when you came on. But talk about how the experience you think will be different for coming in.
Will it be like Juwan Howard?
I think that the experience will be, I think that the thing with Hubert, a couple things. Steve Kerr didn't have any head coaching experience.
True.
Nash doesn't have any head coaching experience. Hubert's been around the game his whole life, played at the highest level, sat by Roy Williams for 9 years. He's good with people. And the only thing's different is, he gets to decide how to run practice, how to organize, how to have the style of play and, make adjustments and call timeouts. He's a smart guy. He probably already has, if he's like me, I wasn't a head coach. My first head coaching job was Notre Dame, and we won 22 games, I think.
Right.
My second year, I'm the head coach at North Carolina. We get ranked #1 in the country. We go on an 18-game winning streak. Anybody that is preparing to be a leader, you don't prepare the day you get the job. You prepare on your journey. And so you have your own notebooks, you have your own thoughts, you have your own concepts, your own ideas, and now he's going to get to implement them. The foundation will be Carolina basketball, but there's going to be little tweaks that are Hubert Davis. And I think that's a good thing, because you don't want to try to be somebody you're not.
Interesting. And you, in your book, you talk about the decision to go to UNC when you're in Notre Dame, and it wasn't a given. And
No.
and in regards to, you felt a little bit, I think you said Michael Jordan called you and others, because there was a concern if you didn't take it, it would go outside the family because of Fogler was somewhere else. Roy Williams was some did, wasn't
Roy Williams
interested at
turned
that
it
time.
down.
Right.
George Karl couldn't get out of his contract, and
Right.
Larry Brown, for whatever reason, and Eddie Fogler was, I think, happy at South Carolina and was only going to coach to his 50. And so, I thought long and hard about it, because I love Notre Dame. I love the fit. My concern was bringing my assistants with me. I wanted to take care of them. People don't realize that I got this job July 11th. Okay. Just think about that now. What goes on in July?
All
recruiting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Hubert's getting it, April, early April. He gets time to, and he's been there as an assistant. He gets time to get his staff in place, get to know the players, which he already knows. It's a huge advantage. Taking over July 11th, looking back, that was crazy. And looking back, I probably should have stayed at Notre Dame. Maybe I'd be in line to be the head coach at North Carolina now. But you live and learn, and you move on, and you learn from the mistakes you make.
Right.
So you sort of started the next segue into the question I wanted to ask, and I don't want to oversimplify anything that we talk about that has to do with some of the, things that have been going on since last summer. And I woke up this morning and I was curious to see who the East Tennessee State coach was, because it sort of went under the radar. And so I read the article about Coach Oliver, and I instantly got really upset at what I read, because, the whole kneeling thing, obviously, depending on who you are, is a very hot topic. And so I don't, maybe you do, but John and I don't know what really happened with Coach Shea and why he was either forced out or he decided to quit. And so it said, as his quote, that he's not necessarily going to talk about kneeling right now, that he wants them to be better communicators. And
the new coach,
the new coach. Yeah. And I told John and Gordon, I was like, I can't even believe that there was any hesitation in him saying if they want to kneel, they can kneel. And there was an incident at Bluefield State, same kind of thing. The president went to the "we're a private institution" card, and they're not only saying don't kneel, but they're suspended for kneeling. And so I wanted to tie that into leadership, because if you take over a program sooner rather than later, John's talked about this a lot, and sorry to be so long-winded, but I'm trying to tie it in from sort of a cultural perspective on how you would handle parents asking these types of questions that maybe weren't asked in the past, and players asking these types of questions. Maybe it wasn't discussed before, but now it's a whole different mindset in terms of players coming to college campuses. So, how do you approach this whole thing if you're a head coach, in a Power 5 or even a mid-major?
Well, I think the first thing is you better be aligned with your chancellor and your athletic director. Bottom line, that's got to be communicated. What is our thoughts on this? What are the unintended consequences? And then I would memorialize what's discussed in an email. Okay. I'd follow up and say, okay, just to follow up and get clarity, We met about kneeling, and you said that, you know, it was said that it would be okay if our team knelt, um, because there's a he said she said now with Coach Shea, right?
Yeah.
So you got to CYA. You better cover your butt.
Yep.
And because when there's pressure on the administration, a lot of them are very weak. They like their jobs, so they're going to defer to the boosters, to the people, board of trustees, and they're going to, you know, not have your back. And so you better align with them, have serious, crucial conversations, and then document it. And so then you make your decision. You give them your recommendation, but at the end of the day, you're working for them. It's not your school. It's bigger than that. And you may believe in kneeling, but if they say don't kneel, then you better communicate that with your team, and the team can decide, okay, we're gonna kneel, we're gonna boycott, or we'll stay in the locker room. But you got to come to some consensus, and the best way to do that is get everybody involved and talk to the players and explain to them why you believe what you believe, and hear that from them, why they believe what they believe, and maybe come to some compromise. So I think you can't just say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's got to be vetted. It's got to be communicated. Otherwise, you're going to have issues.
And in all fairness, that's what John shared with me this morning. He's like, we all have somebody to answer to, you know, and I guess from a personal standpoint, I've heard Kyle Korver and JJ Redick be very outspoken white voices about this topic, and even going to the point where they feel complicit as white men because of a lot of the stories and the racial reckoning that's been going on. And I guess that's sort of where I'm in alignment with them. And I know John is too, but he also works as a VP at a college. And so he understands that maybe better than I do about, you know, having to answer to somebody. But, you know, I just think I get frustrated with, you know, the fact that there's not more collective white voices, whether it's a Tom Brady or, you know, more white coaches. You know, Mac Brown has been very outspoken, backing the players. So I guess it's more along those lines. But like you said, if that's what they had a discussion about, I'm just surprised that more players aren't transferring and that there's not more. Because if that happened at any other major university, I think it would be a headline news.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it would be. You know, and I went from one extreme to the other. I was a stand up, hand on your heart, American flag. And I listened, you know, I listened to Colin Kaepernick. I don't respect a lot of things Kaepernick has done since. I don't agree with a lot of things, but he talked to a military veteran and got advice to kneel down. Right. And the idea that flag has given us the freedom of speech. And he was trying to make a point, and he risked his career in doing that. I respect that. And so I would have allowed my players to kneel if they wanted to kneel, and I probably would have knelt with them. But that doesn't mean I don't respect the flag. I respect the military. I carry around a challenge coin from the military. I try to thank every military person I meet for serving our country and giving us the freedom to question. And I think that's what makes our country the best country in the world.
So it's interesting. John, let me finish with this point, then you can follow up. And the fact that you said that Colin listened to a military person and maybe gave him validation. It's the same thing that I get frustrated about the arrogance of white America, that African Americans in the Black and brown community are sharing their stories, their fears, their frustrations, and other people who are not in the Black and brown community are trying to tell them how they should act or what's appropriate, when they're telling you, from LeBron James to Doc Rivers, who you played in the McDonald's All-American game with, they're telling you what they're scared of for their kids. They still have to have that talk. when they're kids, so that when they go driving, that they do the right things. The arrogance and not listening to them, truly listening to them, and them telling us what they hope for is just still mind blowing to me. But at the same time, like Rashawn McLeod said, we have to sort of, sorry to bring up a Duke player, but we have to let things sort of happen organically at the same time.
Well, organically in some ways hasn't worked for a long time.
Yeah.
So you have to shock the system sometimes to create change.
Yeah.
And Martin Luther King did that in a peaceful way. And there's been a lot of protests. I just wish they were peaceful protests.
Yeah.
And I wish that there wouldn't be a cancel culture, because when people do speak up that are pro-America or conservative or, godly people, conservatives, then people just want to cancel them, and they're quick to call them racist. That's not fair either. To me, this is a melting pot, and we need to respect each other and respect the differences. I don't have to like someone, but I hope that I can respect them. And if they come at me in a respectful manner, I'll listen. And then they have the opportunity to change my mind, like Colin Kaepernick did about kneeling. So it's all how it's done. If somebody doesn't, it's so easy now because of social media that if somebody doesn't agree with somebody, they cancel them, call them a name, and try to bully them into submission. And
that's the part I meant, I guess. Yeah.
What's that?
That's the part I meant, I think, about trying to ram it down someone's throat. You can be very opinionated, but have something to back it up as to why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, and do it in a way where you're not name calling.
Yeah.
It's childish. Really. It's childish.
Really. That last segment is in part why Dr. J, Coach K, and myself, Hootie Hoot, love sharing spaces with our guests, because that was really moving and an incredible experience to hear those powerful words and see the evolution of Coach Dougherty and how we can respect each other's differences and still find some common ground in the process. Dr. J will now ask Coach Dougherty about a certain individual that he once recruited while he was an assistant coach at Davidson, right here in the Sports Deli.
So, Coach, I want to talk about, go back to your Davidson days. The first thing is, we're talking about a lot of things. Is there a story about how Charlie Scott ended up at UNC and not Davidson? I have some friends down in North Carolina who have a story for me. I'm curious if you
probably heard the right story. I mean, it's legendary that Lefty Driesell had Charlie Scott locked up.
Right.
And then, somehow Coach Smith got a hold of him and made him the first African-American athlete at the University of North Carolina.
Wow.
And Charlie went on to a great career in college and the NBA and the ABA. So, yeah.
I don't know if there's that soda shop right off campus at Davidson. And the story I've heard is he and his mom went in there after Lefty was done recruiting him, and they didn't get served.
Oh, okay.
And I have a friend in Charlotte who took me to that soda shop, and because he knew I was a huge college fan, he goes, "You know what this place is famous for? This is where Davidson lost Charlie Scott."
Wow.
And Charlie Scott's mom got in the car and drove, because remember, North Carolina was not North Carolina under Coach Smith then. They were on their way up, but he was a prize recruit, and she got in the car and drove to Coach Smith, and that was the end of that.
I didn't hear that story, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So we have a quick story. Hoot and I went to Goucher, and if you can go back in a time machine to, I think, 1990, you were recruiting a skinny white kid for Davidson in Catonsville, Maryland, named Dave Clark. I mean, and he was the guy that looked, Dave listens to the show, so he knows I love him, but he was kind of the guy that looked like he was the guy providing to the team, if you know what I mean? Like And because
No, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean providing to the team?
We would joke that he had the long hair. He was the hippie look. And so,
Gotcha.
and then
Van
he'd come in and he break. So talk about when you're at the low D1, and Davidson wasn't that low, but mid D1.
No, Davidson's low D1.
Okay.
We were independent. We were bad.
That's right.
We were 4-24 our first year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So
we were low. We were bottom feeders.
So talk about the difference now compared to then, when having to make that type of decision of like meaning the lack, there's not as much social media. You can't get it. There's not the AAU at the level it is now, and how you had to make a decision, and Dave ended up being pretty much an All-American at Division III. And, the story is we would take him to downtown Philly and he would break ankles in the city parks. You talk about the parks left and right, to the point that people from the neighborhood in Philly would come out because this white kid is just breaking ankles left and right and dropping threes. So it was, he was hysterical. But talk about the process you had to go through back then when some guy's on the fence. The difference between D1 and D3, how it's not that big a difference.
Well, it's, there's always players you see at a non-D1 level, or let's just say, high major, mid major, low major, Steph Curry.
Right.
Exactly.
How'd that happen? There's always a player, Jerome Kersey went to Longwood University, which it was Longwood College back then. It was they were Division III. John Stockton was at Gonzaga before Gonzaga was Gonzaga. So, there's always, even today, going to be sleepers. And that's where the assistant coaches make their reputation, is uncovering the sleeper. It's a lot easier. Dave Hanner said this to me when he was at East Tennessee State, or he was at North Carolina, but he was at East Tennessee State, and Dave was an assistant at North Carolina and a player there. He made a great point. He said, it's a lot easier to steal a player from a lower level than it is from a higher level, right? So if you're at a mid-major school, it'd be easier to steal a player from a low D1 who you think's really good than try to steal a player from, that's being recruited by an ACC school. So most players want to go to a higher level, but it takes guts. Because what's the first question a coach asks an AAU coach or a high school coach? Who else was recruiting them? Mm-hmm. And they'll say, well, these small schools. And like, oh, geez, maybe he's not that good. I must be wrong. So you have to have confidence in your evaluation. There's a difference between recruiting and evaluating.
Yep.
You got to evaluate before you recruit. Unfortunately, a lot of guys just recruit, and they recruit off a list. So they recruit off a reputation. Mm-hmm. They don't trust their own eyes because maybe their eyes aren't very good.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I think you look at
Ja Morant.
Well, Ja Morant, but you look at Patrick Williams, who went to Florida State. Mm-hmm. Carlton Young is the assistant coach at Florida State. He saw Patrick Williams, loved Patrick Williams. Well, Patrick Williams wasn't being recruited by Carolina or Duke. In the backyard, he's in Charlotte, and he went up and stole him. Right. That's a good evaluator and a good recruiter. He's got both.
Right.
So I got one question before we talk about your book a little bit more, if you want to delve into that, if we haven't covered some of the things that you want to talk about before the rapid fire, the famous favorite part of the podcast that John loves.
I do not.
But what did you learn in the booth besides your coaching experiences that helped you be a better man and a better coach, that if you got another job, that would help you?
When you say the booth, you mean doing TV?
Yeah, doing television as a color analyst.
Yeah, well, I think the neat thing is you get to see other styles. I love watching practice. So you get to see practices, and you get to study other coaches' styles of play and realize that, it's not just one. Different styles, different techniques, different ways to practice. different ways to communicate. I think that, you're always trying to, at least I am always trying to learn. So I love watching practice.
Yeah. So anything else about your book that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just think it's, most people write about successes. I wrote about failure. I lost my job at North Carolina. I went on a leadership journey. I wanted to get better, not bitter. And I think that leadership is the most important topic in the world, in every piece of part of life, home, community, work. Most important topic that's not formally taught. Ridiculous. It needs to be taught. And then it needs to be practiced. It's not just something you can learn by reading a book. It's a skill like playing golf, playing tennis. You look at these golfers, we're getting ready for the Masters. They practice like every day. They've got a swing coach. Why would Bryson DeChambeau need a swing coach? He's one of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
So you get these CEOs, these head coaches, and they don't have a leadership coach.
Interesting.
And that's when they make mistakes, like I did at North Carolina.
Interesting. Coach, I had a follow-up question for you in regards to your time at FAU. Were you there when Howard Schnellenberger was there?
Yes, I was.
And he just passed away, an iconic football coach. Can you talk about, he was building up that program, from nothing. I have a friend who worked at the university at the time, and literally on his wall, he has the original first game football tickets in the history of FAU. And I actually met years later the president that was there at the time at FAU when he went to FIT. Can you talk about what you learned from Coach Schnellenberger, who just passed away, and what people out there may not appreciate when they think of Miami? The first thing many people think about is Jimmy Johnson, but if you really know, Schnellenberger is the one that built it up.
Well, first of all, I think he played for Bear Bryant.
Yeah, at Kentucky.
And he's a big personality. His voice, he talks like this. He's always wearing his championship rings. When I first met him, he says, "Wear your championship rings. You got to wear your championship rings. The recruits got to see that you were champion." I'm like, okay. So I wore my championship rings. I think he loved to build. Mm-hmm. He loved to make a difference. And I can relate to that. I've had 4 head coaching jobs. They've all been rebuilding jobs. Now, people won't look at North Carolina as a rebuilding job, but at the time it was. I knew we were going to be good my first year, bad my second, and rebuilding my third, and that's the way it played out. And then I left, and 2 years later, that starting 5 won a national championship. There's an energy that takes. They're incorporating your culture and making change, setting your vision, and then getting people to follow along on that path is exciting. And Schellenberger did that at Kentucky, Louisville, FAU, Miami.
Well, I know I speak for John, and we applaud you for your evolution, because a lot of people just say, "This is who I am, take it or leave it." And you've continued to evolve, which is, probably feels good.
Every day, man.
Yeah.
Every day. Lifelong learner.
Yeah.
Got to learn something every day.
All right. Buckle your seatbelts. Bill Walton or Lav as an analyst?
Oh, geez. Oh, geez. Oh, both good guys, but golly. I can only take so much Grateful Dead. And Lav likes to talk about share the sugar. I'm trying to cut out on sweets. But I tell you what, Bill Walton, he's really fascinating how smart he is and his wealth of knowledge. So no offense, Lav, but I'll go with the Big Red.
John, that definitely sets a record for the this or that segment for an answer in terms of time. That was outstanding.
That was great.
Which chapter of your book was the hardest to write?
Oof. I don't have them numbered,
Topic.
but I think the part about managing change with Coach Smith,
Mm-hmm.
when I took over the program, and there were some things that I didn't put in the book, but a couple of things I put in there that some people might not like, but Coach Smith, having lunch with Coach Smith and Coach Guthridge, and Coach Smith said to me that I was the 5th choice. A month after I took the job, I'm like, why do you have to say that? Why say that? And that was hurtful. And I debated putting that in the book, but I just think that it's truthful, and I forgave him for that. I love Coach Smith, but we're all flawed. We all make mistakes. We're human, and so it was my opportunity to kind of tell people what I was going through as the head coach of North Carolina, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
So you've evolved, and just to follow up to that, you're in a different place emotionally now. So do you still have the same thought process about that, or do you look at it like he was just being honest and he wanted you to prove to everyone that even if you were the 5th choice, that you were going to be the right choice?
No, it was not that. It was more of a control thing. And I think he was upset that he said, it's your program. When I was being interviewed, it's your program, run it how you see fit. I was told I could bring my staff with me, but deep down, I think that he just didn't approve of some of the things that I did, like bringing my staff with me. And, I probably should have asked him that question, but he did say, it's your program, run it how you see fit. But
tough call.
It was hard, but I should have managed Coach Smith differently, but it was weird for me as a former player to manage him, to manage up. I talk about that a lot, about managing up. Not many CEOs take over a job and the former CEO is still in the building, right?
Sure.
And that's a blessing and a curse. So I should have managed him better. And that was my lack of experience, because I didn't take any leadership courses before I was the head coach. And that's why people should read my book.
Yeah, of course. Has Coach Davis reached out to you?
No, he's not.
Yeah.
No.
Larry Brown or Chuck Daly?
For what?
Just better coach, or who you would choose?
Well, his family, right? You talk about family before? What, are you kidding me?
All right.
And Coach Brown's alive, so he would hear this interview. I mean, Coach Brown, come on.
He might come on too, or I'm trying. Ben Braun's a good friend.
And you're trying to set me up. That's bad, man. No, Coach Brown is a genius.
All right.
He's a savant.
Yeah. We hope we can get him on. Steve Nash or Kyrie?
To what? Steve Nash.
Nash, yeah.
He's a winner. He's never been a distraction.
Yeah.
He's played hurt.
Yeah, I heard a story where
he believes the earth is round.
God dang it.
He shows up when he's supposed to.
Yeah.
He doesn't take time off.
I heard a story where he could get on a treadmill at the highest speed and go full tilt for 60 minutes. Like his conditioning was incredible.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk about New York. He has a place in New York. He did when he was a player. I think he still does now. I have friends who in the city have seen him play pickup with no attention. Like they just walk by a park and they're like, I think I just saw Steve Nash at the park. At the,
he could blend in,
on 4th Street.
He could blend in a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you sure? And so my friend literally went back. He goes, oh, that was Steve Nash. Cause now there's 100 people watching the game, but he no attention, just went out there and he just wanted to get a workout in. And then he went home.
Coach, can you share real quickly the story, what your mom said after you were named Notre Dame's head coach?
Yeah, my mom, Irish Catholic, thought I was going to be a priest. In fourth grade, I went to her. I said, I'm going to be an altar boy. And she's thinking, oh, my son's going to be a priest. And in the next breath, I said, yeah, you get tips for weddings and funerals. And that burst her bubble. And fast forward, it's the day of my press conference. After the press conference, it's a beautiful day, atypical in South Bend in April. And we're walking towards the dome and in the basilica. And my mom grabs my arm, pulls me close, and whispers in my ear. She said, Matthew, if you couldn't be a Catholic priest, being the head coach at Notre Dame's a close second.
There you go. Yeah, that's great.
That's classic. Bill Russell or Kareem?
Ooh. I'd probably go with Kareem just because of his ability to score.
Yeah. You or MJ in golf?
MJ. Although I did clip him for $60 several years ago. Yeah, I got him. I asked him afterwards, can you sign these for me? And he got pissed.
Bill
If I get the
Belichick?
bet right, if I get the strokes right,
That's right.
I can maybe win.
There you go.
Yeah, that's right. Belichick or Phil Jackson?
Phil Jackson.
Johnny Carson?
Phil Jackson. Well, let me just add to that. The Last Dance.
Mm-hmm.
People look at that in different ways. To me, I was fascinated with Phil Jackson. His leadership ability was unbelievable. How he could manage Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan, Jerry Krause.
Yeah. Scotty.
And just the way he could get through to the players. His emotional intelligence was off the charts. Basketball is harder to coach than football because football has defined roles. Basketball, the coach has to define the roles. In football, the position defines the roles. It's easier. And you get a timeout between every play. In basketball, you don't get to do that. It's organized chaos.
Yeah, that's true. Johnny Carson or Dave Letterman?
Oh, wow. They're both pretty good. Oh, man. That's a good one. I like them both. I'll tell you, but I guess I'll just go old school. Johnny Carson. Ed McMahon was a great straight man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sidekick. You need good assistant coaches. Rick Majerus or Bob Huggins?
Huggins. Yeah, no question. Huggins.
If you're meeting with, go ahead.
No, he's just is what he's done is amazing. He's a smart man, and as tough as he is on his players, I think he's good to his players.
Yeah, I remember some of the shouting matches he got into it with his players at Cincinnati, and they just respected the heck out of him. They still do. Yeah. If you're meeting with President Biden or Kamala Harris, what's one thing you'd talk to them about?
Oof. Whoa. Truly trying to unify the country. They say it, but I don't like when, they blame, like, I think it's bad. Like when I was the head coach at North Carolina, I didn't place blame on players. I didn't place blame on the previous staff. Be accountable, stand up. They're not, take accountability, be truthful, be transparent. Nobody wants to take accountability for the border.
Right.
They're quick to blame Trump. Kamala Harris is supposed to be in charge of the border. Now she doesn't want to be in charge of the border because she knows it's a mess. So she wants to be in charge of Central America. I think we just want to hear the truth. Do we have to hear everything? No. So I don't think everything should be public. You know, I don't necessarily think we should have cameramen or women or newscasters videotaping war. I don't think that's good. War's war, man. We can't understand that. So I just think accountability and a level of transparency, and you know, if you mess up, say it and own it and move on. So that's probably what I'd say.
Interesting.
Powerful stuff. On a lighter note, John, get ready. Waffles, pancakes, or French toast?
Pancakes.
Oh,
Banana pancakes.
wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. You're the second person that said banana pancakes. So we lost John Thompson, Big John, and John Chaney in the last year. What impact did they have on the game in your eyes?
Well, first of all, they impacted men, especially African-American young men. They were leaders, true leaders, not only on the basketball court, but in the communities, in the Black communities, in the white communities. They were educators. I coached against John Chaney's teams. I watched his teams practice. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go watch his 6 a.m. practice.
Wow.
You know, I played against John Thompson, obviously. You know, and their players respect them and love them. What else can be said?
Totally. Popcorn or candy at the movies?
Oh, Twizzlers.
Sorry,
And
John.
they're the bag's gone by the time the lion starts to roar.
There you go.
The 82 men's basketball NCAA champs or the 2021 Baylor Bears?
Oh, come on. Now, man. Come on. Come on.
Next question.
Exactly.
Roger Maris or Mickey Mantle?
Now, I, you know, I'm only 59 now. Come on. You know, Mickey was more popular, but Roger, I'd have to look at the stats. He might have been more productive.
Right. So, Coach, are you a Yankees fan or Mets fan?
Well, that's a tough question. I grew up a Met fan, jumped on the Yankee bandwagon in '77.
Right.
Kind of had a foot in each wagon in '86. You know, I like both, but the Mets were bad for so long, and the Yankees were good for so long. It's hard not to like the Yankees.
So here's a baseball question. If you take Sandy Koufax out and Willie Mays out, do you think Reggie Jackson is the greatest living baseball player now? Former player?
Oh,
because we just lost Hank Aaron. We've lost a lot of these greats. You know, Joe Morgan passed away, you know, so there's a fewer of these guys. Johnny Bench probably still around.
You know, that's a hard question because I love Reggie Jackson. One of the reasons I wore 44 in college was because of Reggie Jackson.
Okay, there we go.
He made striking out an art form.
Right.
Like that was, I got to shake his hand one time. You know, he was so dynamic, explosive with the bat. But in terms of greatness, you know, I mean, you know, then you have to incorporate the field and you have to incorporate other things. And I'm not really qualified to say. I mean, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of guys that are alive that, you know, you put in that class. I just,
right. Okay.
You know, yeah, no. Yeah, we've lost a lot of good ones. Tom Seaver was one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was Tom Seaver, Joe Morgan,
I used to
Hank
get
Aaron.
Yeah, I used to get mud on my right knee pitching because of Tom Seaver.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, a few more, Coach. Dishes, vacuuming, or laundry?
I'm good in all three. I'm a triple threat in that area. Fortunately, my wife's not listening. But I really do a good job with the dishes, loading and unloading.
Wow.
I like to stack them in an orderly fashion. I'm an efficient stacker. I'm an efficient stacker of the dishwasher. We don't have much carpet in our house, but that used to be one of my jobs as a kid. And I would do it like they do in the outfield. Like I had lines in the carpet.
Nice.
And then the other one was laundry. I'm good. I don't mind doing laundry. I can fold a mean towel. I'm good with the socks. I match them up. You know, I'm particular. Like you don't want to cross match an Adidas sock with a Nike sock.
Absolutely.
Like that never happens.
Exactly.
And that's not going to happen on my watch.
Exactly. Good.
Lucy or Dick Van Dyke?
You talking about the shows?
Yeah.
Or the actors?
Yeah.
Lucy Ball, that's classic. I mean, that's I'd go with Lucy Ball.
Lucy or the Honeymooners?
Honeymooners.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Well,
Jokic, AD, Doncic, Embiid, or Karl Anthony Towns?
Doncic.
Yeah.
And then the Joker.
Yeah, definitely.
The other guys are too inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Either hurt, moody. Doncic is unbelievable, and he's got the ball in his hands. Joker is unbelievable, and he's got the ball in his hands. You know, those two guys they're unbelievable.
All right, I got two more questions before I ask you the last one, which is the most important one. So if you're up 3, you're on D, 6 seconds left. Do you foul or let them shoot the 3?
Depends. Are you inbounding the ball from out of bounds? Is it on a missed shot? What are you talking about?
Let's say after a made basket.
On the run?
Yeah.
And I might call timeout. I think that's a thing that coaches have to be conditioned to do. Under 10 seconds to 3 seconds, you score to go up 2 or 3 or even 1.
Would you call the timeout if the other coach didn't have a timeout left in the bag?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
Yeah, because you want to set your defense. I would like to be in the situation where I think you always have to say, what would the other coach not want you to do?
But haven't you practiced that scenario in shoot around that morning about, this scenario, or obviously you've practiced these scenarios.
Well, let me ask you a question. UCLA, I don't know if they had a timeout or not, but they scored that layup. Do you think they wish they called a timeout? No. When
well, I mean,
Scuggs hits a shot.
50-50. Yeah, you're right. I mean, but it's 3 seconds left, coach. I mean, that's not like 6 seconds.
Yeah, but it still gets you to half court against an unset defense. That's the thing. The defense is unset. You want your defense set. So I would probably call timeout on a made basket, because I don't want them running up the court with whatever you said, 6 seconds. Your defense isn't set.
I'll be honest with you, that did not even enter my head. And that's a great point that you make. It really is, because 3 seconds, I can sort of understand it, just to remind them, or 6 seconds. But 3 seconds, it's sort of different, because you're figuring, they're barely going to get a half court shot off. But really,
that's a really hard thing to install in a 19 and 20-year-old, the excitement of making that basket and the thought to know to call the timeout.
Yeah.
With X amount of time.
That's why you got to practice it. And that's why you're yelling and screaming. You're leaning towards the officials, and the clock gets stopped. Yeah, I mean, there are times I wish I called timeout. In that situation, you really got to practice that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, last question before I ask you about John and I. And what's your biggest weakness, even now, after all of your evolution as a leader?
chocolate.
All right, so you get a head coaching job, and you got a Dobo or an assistant coaching position, hypothetical, of course. Do you hire John or me?
Oh man, are there any other options?
Exactly.
Gordon, but he's not here.
Yeah. Go with the guy that's not here based on what you've seen here today, Coach, and you'll be employed longer.
John, what's your favorite food?
Like
if you were last meal, what would you want?
Steak and lobster.
Michael, what would you want?
Seafood, definitely.
Oh God, you're both out.
Gordon
would be
a vegetarian, so Gordon's more healthy.
Yeah, I tell you, I don't know. I don't know. Like the hat on crooked on the bench, that wouldn't go well.
Right.
So I'd probably have to go with John.
There we go.
I love it, Coach. Really honored that you joined us. It's truly a pleasure to talk to you and pick your brain and have you be so transparent about so many things and a lot of things you could be doing with your time. And I hope you get another shot. It'd be fun to watch you, at this point of your life, with a different mindset, not only as a coach, but just as a man, as a husband, a father. And I hope you put it out into the universe that's what you want, and you get another shot.
Well, I'm coaching. It's just I'm coaching executives.
Right.
And that's fulfilling work too. And I don't have to worry about parents calling me after a loss.
That's right.
I don't have to worry about Twitter University giving me a hard time after a loss.
True.
And the underbelly of college athletics is not pretty.
Yeah.
And I purposely go out of my way and I call some guys that I know in the business and say, hey, I'm getting that itch. Every March I get the itch, right?
Sure.
And so I call a couple of people and they just tell me how miserable they are and how miserable the business is. I'm like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
There's a couple places I would consider as a head coach or an assistant.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a beautiful game, crappy business.
Yeah. Good point.
So I appreciate you guys. And
thanks
for promoting the book, Rebound from Pain to Passion. People can get it on Amazon or go to rebound-book.com. Thank you very much.
Thanks, all right, Coach. Much
Take
love
care.
And respect. Take care of yourself.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks so much. Well, that was great.
Yep. See ya.
Are you coming tomorrow or no?
Who's tomorrow? Probably
Ray Young.
No, I can't.
All right. So I can't. Oh, man. John's always good for 10 laughs. We can't thank Matt Doherty enough for joining us in the Sports Deli. Former North Carolina head coach and Notre Dame head coach and Florida Atlantic and Southern Methodist head coach, assistant at Davidson and Kansas. Just an honor to share space with him. And we hope you enjoyed it. And remember, your voice matters when fighting systemic racism. Read a book, acknowledge your white privilege, watch a movie about institutional racism, call your local or state representatives, and or have a conversation with someone that doesn't look like you. We have to change the economic, educational, police, housing, prison, and voting suppression narratives that currently need to be changed in this country. And the only way to do that is to listen and learn and then help be a part of the mobilization and change that we want to see. Remember, you can always send us an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com. Until next time, please mask up still. Remember, Black Lives Matter. Peace.